You are.
Okay. Good afternoon and welcome. It's 4 p.m. and there being a quorum of council, I call the City Council Strategic Planning Meeting of October 12th, 2021 to order. First item is the American Rescue Plan Act, also known as ARPA funding. And we'll have Lisa, Finance Director Lisa Strickland, to present this item.
Good afternoon, all.
Good afternoon.
Excited to bring you an update on what we know now about the American Rescue Plan Act. So this afternoon, we want to let you know the amount of the city's award, talk a little bit about the guidance that's available, and we've also met with different departments and with community development, and we've got some potential project funding. Of course, it's not an all-inclusive list, but it's just some possibilities and some ideas to kind of, get it moving. So in North Carolina, over $2 billion has been awarded to counties, $668 million to metro cities, and $705 million to non-entitlement units. The city of Monroe is a non-entitlement unit. We've received or been awarded $11,326,507. The first disbursement was received, so we have that cash in the bank, $5,663,253. These funds must be obligated by 12/31 of 24, so we've got 3 years to put our project list together and commit it into the different things that we wish to use the money for, and then we just have to spend it by 12/31 of 26. So as the money comes down to us, there's a set of guidelines. There's grant allowable expenditures under the American Rescue Plan Act, and then of course there's the city's authority under state law. We're looking to find that middle ground. We need to find, what's allowable under ARP and what's allowable under state law, because we can't do one or the other unless, we're authorized by both. So we're looking for that common ground right in the middle of those two circles. The guidance that is available, and you're welcome to hop onto the website. The best guidance I've found has been the U.S. Treasury regulations. There is an interim final rule. We've been waiting for this to be finalized, the final rule. And in fact, the state was even advising that governments wait until the final ruling is published, and it seems as though it's been delayed now until maybe early winter. So they have said that if we make any decisions under the interim final rule that could be changed under the final rule, we won't be held responsible to give that money back because the rules changed. So it's kind of like if you pick a project and then the thing changes, we'll be okay. We'll be grandfathered in under that guidance that we currently have to use. The U.S. Treasury has also published what they had called FAQs. These are just different Q&As of different things that are allowable under the grant. These really help a lot, I thought. Some great examples in the FAQs. And then the compliance and reporting guidelines are just the guidelines of the grant, what's allowable under the grant, how do you report it, the reporting deadlines, of which the first reporting deadline has now been extended until the spring, until March 31st. So,
I'm sorry. Can I cut the light off, please?
oh, David, thank you. The School of Government has been having very many updates and sessions.
Yeah, the projector is dying. We can't fix it.
Yeah, that's in my presentation, though. I do have a remedy for this.
We got some money for that. Okay.
Yes. So the Act has really 4 categories of allowable expenditures. They're color-coded. The very first addresses COVID impacts, whether they be public health or economic. The next is replacement of lost revenues. The blue one, premium pay for essential workers. And the last category is infrastructure investments. This is investments in water, sewer, broadband to improve clean drinking water. We're going to cover each one of those, and we've got some projects that fit into each one of the boxes. So the first eligible uses under damages done from COVID-19 directly, whether it be the disease itself or just the economic disruptions. We've come up with a laundry list there. AV equipment in the council chamber and the conference room.
How appropriate. Did you design this into your presentation?
Yes,
Okay.
yes. How did you guess? And Pete has some additional information about that if you want to hear it now or later. That's up to you. But we do have a budget ordinance proposed for that piece and the next piece, which is planning and permitting lobby improvements to become COVID compliant. It involves making a more permanent box outside for dropping plans and a few other things that would make them compliant. The next is outdoor payment kiosks to reduce customer traffic for people paying their utility bills. It would allow them 24/7 access to a kiosk just to pay cash. Permanent sneeze shields. This is already complete, but we can actually reimburse ourselves if we wish to use grant funds to take that money back, put it back.
Excuse me, I don't mean to cut across you.
Yes, ma'am.
But I think I'm going to make a motion that we dedicate strategic planning just to discuss this, so we have time to discuss it in depth, ask questions, and really go through it. I think with the time that you have now, I don't think you have time to adequately explain it. So I make that motion.
I'll second that motion.
I'm not sure I understood the motion.
Okay,
Yeah.
my motion is that we dedicate a strategic planning section just to discuss the American Rescue Plan, so we can discuss it in details, ask questions, because with the amount of time that she has now, it's not adequate for us to fully understand it and ask questions.
I get that, I get that.
You're speaking of the next, excuse me, strategic planning session
Yes,
in November.
Call for the question, Mr.
Well,
Holloman.
first of all, if we wait, are we in jeopardy of
no.
losing any?
We
No,
got until March
no, we have
31st to
time.
report.
This is one of the longer lists on the presentation. I think that's probably a good idea. We could hash out a few more of these and find out a little bit more information individually about the proposed projects. But also one of the big parts is the next slide, the revenue recovery piece. We're allowed to do this revenue calculation, lost revenue calculation 4 times. Once per year. So we've done it for the first year. It's as of 12/31 of 2020. And the loss that we calculated for Monroe was over $5 million. So, allowable uses are any type of one-time expenses that are for general government use. So, this aspect of it, we wanted to coordinate with the fiscal year budget and kind of incorporate that into the manager's.
Maybe that could be emailed to each council person also beforehand. So we've got a
Yes.
motion on the floor and a second.
Mayor Pro Tem, may I ask clarification of the maker of the motion?
Sure.
Is it that you wish to end the discussion right now?
That is
and-
correct.
So that there is a full session in November?
Absolutely.
Wholly to this, and that we move on to the next item.
That is.
I just wanted to
Okay,
seek
and
that
I got one more
clarification.
question then. Would it be possible, would it disturb anything if we got, as you say, a packet that might go over and let us look at some of this stuff?
Absolutely, that would give us time to do that as well.
and not that we want to change or see anything. I'm sure you've done a great job.
Oh, yeah,
You
these are all
and it's very
just,
extensive, it's very detailed, but it's too much just to grasp at once.
right. And these are all just suggestions.
Right.
You know, none of these
One
are
other item
anything that we're
then
stepping into.
staff would then raise is, you do have an action item requested, which is the budget ordinance amendment
Yeah.
for the 3 projects. So is what council's wanting to do, especially considering the fact that the projector wisely shut down,
Yeah.
would you prefer to continue with having the fuller discussion in November, but go ahead and deal with the budget ordinance amendment for the 3 projects identified? Or what is the pleasure of council so that we can make sure that if an action needs to be taken, it is taken?
So is that the fire, the streets and the,
No, sir, it would be the AV equipment, the data
Oh.
storage for backups, and the planning Dropbox store improvements. That's $364,798 worth of projects.
Yes,
Could you explain those 3, Lisa? I
yes.
know about so what about the planning department, Dropbox, and doing?
So the first 2, the AV equipment, Pete can expand on that.
If we,
Good afternoon, Mayor, Council. I did not sabotage that.
yeah, sure.
We had independent folks come in. We know that our current system is dated and dying. So we looked at revamping our system, not only in here to be able to live stream our meetings from inside here, not just the other room, but also have the capability to record and live stream committee meetings, conference meetings, mayoral committee meetings in the other room. So we had it broken down, so we'll replace these screens with 85-inch monitors. Each of you will have a monitor in front of you, so you don't have to look up here, you will have that in front of you, so you don't have to strain to see what's up on the board. We will replace the kiosk here. That will make it more, it will make it easier to deal with public comments and timing, and we will also have some sort of voting mechanism up there for you all to make it easier for the clerk to determine votes. So this room would be roughly $60,000 to upfit all of that with new equipment for capture, and the other room was roughly $40,000. We would install new cameras and have the capability to show back and forth in a better way than we have it right now.
okay.
So
Thank you, Pete. And with due respect, would you call the question, please? Whether-
Okay, we've got the motion on the floor, been seconded. Had any other discussion? I'm going to ask all in favor of that postponement to raise your hand. It's very difficult sometimes to ascertain who's speaking what, so.
It's unanimous.
All right, now, so just to clarify, are we going to approve these 3 or not?
Well,
That
that's-
is up to council, and
that'll
what
come next.
staff would ask that you, now as you've basically ended this discussion, that before you move on to the next item, that
Okay.
you would take up the budget ordinance amendment.
Since it's not time sensitive, I believe since we're dedicating the whole strategic planning, I would prefer doing it then. It's just a personal.
Okay. Was the budget ordinance for all 3 pieces, or just the audiovisual equipment?
It's, I think they're saying they don't, I think.
Well, Sir
Councilmember
Luda might be
Anthony
saying that
has
she doesn't
expressed
want
She does
to.
not want to consider the
All
budget
three,
ordinance
yes.
amendment at this time, but
Oh, okay.
other members could have their say as well. There's no motion on the floor to do anything yet,
Okay.
Well,
so.
I agree with Sir Luda that this is going to take a long time, and it's a lot of information, and I see that. But I can also see the need for what our staff is maybe trying to secure the money for right now. And of $11.3 million, it's certainly a small amount compared to that. And I don't think there's any question that we have deficiencies, as Pete has discussed and we're so seeing, and they didn't happen today.
No.
They've been ongoing for a long time, and we're really behind the times on a lot of this stuff. Our people come in here and they can't see. The other thing that I was wondering about that was on the hearing situation. So were we going to try to update any of the, he's gone, any of the, Bruce, maybe you could answer this. You know, on that live streaming, on all the stuff we do remote, you're not gone, okay. We constantly, if we go remote and do virtual, it's like we can't hear or understand each other. Now, so was there an audio portion to any of this?
Absolutely, 100% full audio, full video. It would be a lot, it's soup to nuts. So when we talked to the gentleman, we wanted everything, so we'll be able to do.
All right, and so that's just the first 3 bullet points up there, or 2, and is it just 185,000?
We're just discussing the first one right now, the 110,000.
Right.
And then the other 2 components we can discuss now, or we can shelve.
Well,
They're both, like you said, though,
yeah.
necessary ones.
I just think that's
More time
important,
sensitive.
and it's a small amount of money, and God knows we're behind our times. We really need to update, and everybody in here has complained about it at some point in time, and, you know, I know we're all gonna be in a hurry to wanna spend this money, and I'm not suggesting that, but, you know, you're less than 1% here is what we're talking about, so it's not a lot of money, and that's all.
Let me ask a question. Pete,
Yes,
okay,
ma'am.
so you said 60 and 40, that's 100,000. So what's the other 10,000 for?
Contingency, yes,
in there?
ma'am.
Yeah.
So if we approve this today, then when would this take effect? Like, how long would the process
I
take?
believe they told us about 3 months from the time we enter our contract. And that is dependent on supply and materials that we
Correct.
can get.
Correct.
So,
Well, see, that makes it even more critical. I mean, if we don't get in line now, and we wait 3 months, we're
Yeah.
gonna be
I would
sitting-
encourage, if you don't approve it in this, then we'll bring it back as in the form of a
Okay.
budget amendment, because it's something that's sorely
Okay.
needed.
Right.
I'm gonna
I'd like to
make
make
a
a
motion
motion.
that we approve,
Yes, the
uh,
first.
the AV equipment in the council chamber and conference room to $110,000.
I second that motion.
Got a motion and a second. All in favor, raise your hand, please. Okay, motion carries.
Thank you. And I'll be happy to answer any other questions offline, specifics of what we're looking at getting.
Okay,
Okay, do we want to just table the other components of the budget ordinance then for that next
To
discussion?
the strategic planning, yes.
Okay,
thank you very much, Lisa. Appreciate it.
thank you. Next item's mine though, so I'm gonna hang out.
Okay.
If you'll have me for another. All right, so. Oh, goodness, that's awful as well. Can't even see the color, it's so washed out. All right, well, I'll give you the gist of it. This is the fiscal year 2023 budget schedule. There are several components where Brian is proposing having departmental presentations at each of the strategic meetings from October through March. Then once we finish those departmental meetings, we'll be at a point in the budget where in April 19th specifically, we'll have a budget workshop with a presentation similar to what we've had in the prior years in the past, where we can run down all of the recommendations, any questions, all the department heads will be here for Q&A. And then we would have the public hearing and adoption of our budget in June, on June 14th. Just wanted to, make you aware of the change, for all of those budget presentations, and I don't even think, it's just for information purposes, so no action is required.
We may have to adjust, since we'll do the November meeting, to talk about the ARPA funding. So in order to accommodate all of the budget discussions, we may need to add a special strategic or two to the agenda. And I'm looking for these meetings to be more of a discussion between council and the departments. I want departments to present their needs, where there's been deficiencies in the past that we need to address. The ARPA funding is going to give us an opportunity to leverage some of that to possibly afford a little more than we have in the past. So I want them to be, for council and staff to have a dialogue and kind of come to some sort of consensus as to where we need to go. And then the budget workshop in April would tie that all together and give you the overall presentation.
That sounds good.
So that's kind of my thinking on that. So moving this to the ARPA discussion to November is no problem, but I just want you to know that we may have to add a meeting or two in there to get it all done.
Okay.
Sounds good.
I like this plan. Thank you so much for putting this together. It's going to be very helpful.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa.
And,
Okay, next item, we'll discuss the Morgan
oh, you'll have to
Street,
get the
Windsor Street
PowerPoint.
project, and Matt Black will bring us that discussion.
Set up for a power.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, this is easier a lot of times.
Okay.
We can try this.
If you could turn off that switch, that'd be great. There we go. Well, unfortunately, we have it out today, the projector, but hopefully you guys have it in front of you or are able to turn around your chair. My name is Matthew Black, the downtown director. I bring forth you today the plans or schematics for the Morgan Windsor Alleyway project. I've been working with Mr. Dan Lambert, who's here today from McAdams, and he's going to present it to you today for information purposes and answer any questions you might have about the project. So Dan, I'll let you take it away.
Appreciate it.
Yeah.
Why weren't these in our packet?
We can get them to you. They came in this morning.
Again, my name is, excuse me, Dan Lambert. I'm the Director of Landscape Architecture with McAdams in Charlotte. And I'd just like to walk you through what we've been doing over the last few months as it pertains to what you currently know as Morgan Street between Main and Hain, and an alleyway that only partially exists today, but will soon be completely connected through from Morgan to Windsor Street. And so the rendering that you see, if you have the good fortune of turning your chairs. Oh, hey.
It's up there.
Surprise. I, as a consultant, am very grateful to hear that you are going to be upgrading your system. It will be greatly appreciated, not only by you, but by those of us who have the regular pleasure of presenting before y'all. So as you can see in the image here, this is intended to become a pedestrian plaza. There still will be the ability for vehicular access to the space when necessary. So the materials in the ground plane will still be able to handle when they need to come through, whether that be fire for emergency access or food trucks to offer food service during events. Let's walk you through the process that got us to where we are today. We started with a kickoff meeting with city staff where we were introduced to the overall vision that you all have as to what's going to happen in the space. We took a site walk to discuss the ideas, to understand the space, to understand the building that's going away and what the intention is over time. And then we took that information back, paired it with a survey. We actually came out and did a physical survey of the space, including areas inside the building that's going to be demolished so that we know what's going to be there when it's all said and done. And developed a site analysis of opportunities and constraints. Those items that would prevent us from doing certain things and those opportunities that were presented given the site's vicinity, the adjacent buildings and their uses, and the potential for what can happen there in the future. From that, we developed a preliminary program of the alternatives as to what we could do within the space. We developed a model, and that's the 3D model that you'll see imagery of today, where we could start to actually push and pull those items and see what makes the most sense. We came back and got city staff input after we looked at different alternatives to try to pick the best alternatives for what would serve you and your citizenry. We went back and revised the concept. We took that revised concept out to the public. We had a meeting here, and then we had a meeting out during one of the classic car shows just a few weeks ago, and got really good input from individuals who were here for those particular events. And then that gets us to where we are today, what I'm going to be presenting to you. So this here is the view from the Main Street side, looking into the space. You'll see that there are bollards in the front which match what you have in other areas of the downtown. The difference being that the center bollards within this would be removable, so that still facilitates the ability for the vehicular traffic, as we talked about before. And there would be an archway sign that is of a height large enough to allow for a fire truck with a ladder to pass through and to operate once it gets beyond it. As you look into the space on the left-hand side, you'll see that there are some small trees. These are intentionally on one side of Morgan as opposed to the other, as that's the side that always gets sun. It brings a little green and some softness to the space, which would otherwise be fairly cold and all hard material. To the right-hand side, in those similar spaces on the opposite, would be art installations. And these we intend to be interactive art, things that people want to come out and get their picture with, kind of those Instagram moments that people know about, where it's something to come take a picture in front of, climb up on, or even interact with in some cases. And you'll also see seating options out there, and you'll see overhead string lights. Now this kind of shows the plan view. It identifies the two different directions. I don't know if there's a laser pointer available on here. But Morgan runs...
Use the mouse.
Yeah, that'll work. Here we go. All right, so this is Morgan. Here's Hain on the top, Main on the bottom. So that space throughout would be the main pedestrian plaza. But as you get through to the middle, where there's currently the old building that's had the limestone taken off of it, the brick building in the center, that building occupies this space right here. So when that goes away, it makes a full connection through to Windsor. So you'll see the archways on either side. There'll be a smaller archway in the middle. There's going to be an interactive fountain in the center. You'll see the trees that I spoke about here. The art pieces would be along this wall, and that's also the locations where in a couple of areas there are gaps enough for food trucks to park. Within this space, there are some swings, some self-illuminated swings, internally illuminated. There's a small turfed area with some shade. There's some seating opportunities. There's an overhead colonnade, and then it ramps back down. It takes you back out to Windsor. So once you get to that halfway point where the building facade currently is, this is what you would see instead, is a smaller pedestrian scale archway. These perforated panels, which kind of separate the space to create more kind of an intimate setting without, being something that someone can hide behind and sneak up on anybody. That's always an issue when you start talking about these spaces, is making sure that security is accounted for. You'll see on the right-hand side those illuminated swings. They're at a circular shape. They'd be hanging from a pergola structure. On the left-hand side, there's required utilities both for this space and for adjacent businesses and potentially future expansion of businesses. That space is going to be cordoned off with some of these panels, so they're still accessible for service when necessary, but they aren't kind of invading the pedestrian space. And if you look beyond that, you see the turf area that I spoke about earlier, opportunity for a couple more trees and other green added to the space. That turf area can be multi-programmed. It could be something that's left open. We have a similar thing over at Waverly. I don't know if any of you have spent any time over there, but we did an open lawn there that originally we thought would have specific programming, but the fact that we decided not to do that actually left it to the imagination of the users, and that lawn gets used like nothing else. Kids run around and roll on it, they play soccer, they throw footballs, People go out, they'll put a towel down and sit out there in the sun. It's really kind of an amazing space. If you go down to the Windsor Alley side, you'll see a similar pedestrian archway identifying Windsor Alley. This narrow end currently has a lot of utility functions, so there's not going to be a lot of additional things added, but on the left-hand side, you'll see we do have opportunity to add some green to soften it up a little. And we are going to make it ADA accessible, so there will be a ramp. You could actually pass through this whole space, and everything will be to ADA tolerances in terms of grade. And then as you get to the narrower portion between the buildings, that's where you'll see that overhead archway, the colonnade. It's more like a skeleton of a structure. And currently it's not in the rendering, but we are intending to light the ribs of that colonnade, and also to have pendant lights hung from it.
In that drawing on the right there, is that an actual roof that would prevent rain from coming in, or is that just a metal facade, like
It's still open to the air.
open?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, just curious.
Yeah, we feel like it's already it feels enclosed a little bit this direction. The intention is to draw that space upward and to really make it feel more open. Anything above would really make that feel like a tunnel, and it's just not a comfortable place to be in.
That's fine.
That's the other reason for lighting the structure as well, is that it gives us opportunity, even when it's just shadow, to have light there.
Right.
You know, it's one of these areas that remains shaded more often than not, just because of the way that the buildings are constructed on either side. And then as you get up into the space, continuing towards the north from that narrow alley, it opens up, as you see on the left-hand side. This is kind of the view from the end of that colonnade, looking back up towards Morgan. There's seating opportunities in there. We're actually looking at some of the seating itself being internally illuminated. One of our objectives is to make this a desirable space at night as well, and to, again, for security purposes, make people feel comfortable. So as many of these things that we can illuminate, we're going to illuminate.
Question for you. You keep talking about security issues. Were there
Yes.
cameras out there?
The intention is to have cameras out there, if I'm not mistaken. We talked at one point about doing so at either end of Morgan, one at the end of Windsor, and then another one kind of halfway down. And I don't mean Windsor, at the alley intersection. Another one about halfway down that can catch both directions.
Will there be Wi-Fi capabilities out there as well?
Yes, there will be data lines out there. So, in fact, one of the things you'll notice in these renderings, and that we've talked about, is there's quite a few overhead lines out there currently, and that includes communication lines. Our intention is to take as many of those lines as possible out of the sky view and get them in duct banks underground.
What kind of material will this seating be made of?
The internally illuminated seating is actually an acrylic.
Okay.
So it's I'm trying to think of a good place to show you an example. There is over at Torrington a brand new building that they built, 7-story building, and in front of it, it's got some of these items that are actually kind of a loop that when they're set together, create a series of tied-in loops. And they can hold up to 400 pounds in any particular spot. So it's a kind of thing that people can lounge on pretty comfortably without feeling like...
You spoke about the turf and that you could play soccer on the football. How large are the turf spaces?
Yeah, it's not, not large enough for like a game.
But I was wondering.
Well, I'm saying at Waverly, small kids will kick a ball.
Okay.
Yeah, here, this one is not as large. It's more intended just to be a place to lounge and
Okay.
kind of
Shoot marbles.
soften up the space.
And
So,
the interactive fountain, tell us more about that.
definitely, and actually, we'll get to that in a second. This is kind of the top end of that where you can see those illuminated swings. You can see the trees in the space. Back on the Morgan Alley side, the intention with where the trees come out of the ground plane is not to have tree grates in particular, but to have it softened like this and have the soil actually come up to the level of the pavers that are in the ground there. Some of the conceptual artwork. These are the particular items that were most selected by the folks during the public input sessions. They really liked the idea of having the angel wings out there, but not particularly on a wall. They liked the idea of having it be something sculptural. They liked the internally lit geode, this thing up in the corner that you could climb in. They liked doing a mural that has local flavor, so something that speaks to what's going on in and around Monroe, maybe a little bit of our history.
That would be a great idea.
And they also like the Instagram moment type where there's something you can interact with, where that's a painting on the wall, but if you put your hand in the right spot, it looks like you're holding the balloons. And this is, these are pins, and so you can lean on it on one side and create the image on the other side.
Right, yeah.
People like that, and then you'll see the illuminated swings as well. This is what I've shown you a couple of times. There's a real life picture of it instead of just the model. And then seating wise, it's a little hard to tell on this screen, but those are the some of the benches and some tables that are internally illuminated, and when laid next to each other, they kind of look like people that are prone there. So, and then also some opportunities for folks who've stopped and got a coffee or an ice cream someplace nearby to sit in the space and just kind of people watch and enjoy it, or their food from the food trucks. There was also a lot of interest in some creative seating. And so, you know, a couple of elements might be something a little more curvilinear. This is one of those things that is always a bit of a challenge, but at the same time, a lot of fun to get something that's unique to your space. And again, because of the intimate scale of everything in this space, it doesn't take a lot of those gestures to make it really cool. It only takes a couple of things. And so we definitely want to have those happen where we can. Now we're to the interactive fountain. And the intention is really for there to be a singular spray feature in the middle of this circle at the intersection. And that can be something that's either manually operated, so they can go and push a button on a stand, and then it goes, or we can set it on a timer. It's going to have the ability to do both, so that thing either runs for X amount of hours a day, or it runs at intervals, or it runs when it's manually operated. This is definitely, it's a miniaturized version of a splash pad. It's not intended to be a splash pad. It's really just added water feature to cool the space, something fun for the kids, but at the same time, what you've got going on at Belk Tonawanda is going to be a full-scale splash pad. So this is not the destination to go and spend your day at the splash pad. This is an additional feature that just enhances the space and gives one more thing to do, and in particular helps cool it. The image on the right is part of a shadow study of the model at 2 p.m. on July 2nd. So middle of July, or start of July, you've got bright glaring sun there, middle of the afternoon. It's going to be a toasty space. So the little addition of water helps significantly.
Is there any way that either the tables or the seating could have a way to charge phones?
Yes.
Great.
In fact, either they could contain it, or the poles that the catenary overhead lights are on can have charging stations in the base of them.
That would be great.
Those are going to have to be electrified in some cases already for the lights, so it makes sense to put in a GFI box and have something that's accessible. Those also are a necessity. When you're dealing with historic structures like this, we can't hang the lights from the side of the buildings. The second you start putting any bolts or anything into an old building, you're asking for trouble. And then if something breaks, you also have the issue of, well, whose fault was that? And we don't want to mess with that. So when we're dealing with this space, all of these new features are going to be set up adjacent to buildings, not against buildings, not mounted to buildings.
So everything vertical that's being added will be a separate structure. There'll be no connection to the building. And that's beneficial for the building and for the structure that we're putting in.
Right. The only connections that will be made of any sort are when the power lines get rerouted. The last run that goes to the buildings for their own individual services.
And just information, who was surveyed?
I'm sorry?
Who was surveyed?
It was really kind of just open to whoever passed by, to be honest, or whoever came when it was, the meeting was first hosted here. It was, as far as I understand, the invitation went out via.
Yeah, so the invitation went to all 110 on the email listserv that I have for downtown. So all the businesses were invited, as well as the businesses were asked to share that information with the public. And we also advertised for that from the general community for input sessions as well.
So you had a good cross-section of citizens who responded?
Yes, we definitely have interest in both business owners and citizens.
And then, as I mentioned before, the intention is for the space to really be activated at nighttime as well. And so it's just a little inkling of what might be in terms of having the space lighted, having lighted artwork, lighted furniture. We've also talked about there being a couple of pedestrian lights which are not present in this model, but we definitely see the need for, just to make sure that we have sufficient lighting through this to feel comfortable. That's the aim. If the space is not comfortable, no one's going to use it. So we are very keenly aware that we are creating a space that we want people to be in, not only during daytime hours, but in the evenings, weekends. We want those feet on the ground here to make redevelopment opportunities and existing businesses both successful options.
Mr. Chairman, I've got two quick questions. On the alleyway where the building's going to be removed,
Yes, sir.
will those existing buildings have access to that alleyway going from Morgan Street to Windsor?
There's,
And number two,
yeah.
one thing that I constantly hear downtown is public restrooms, and I was thinking public restrooms were going to be included in this.
I can tell you a little bit about my experience with public restrooms, and generally they are a fantastic idea for the first week and a half, 2 weeks that they're open. And then they tend to draw a certain element because it is a place where people can hide out. Maintaining whether or not they're open during certain hours becomes a maintenance nightmare for y'all. And it generally, you can only lock them so much before somebody breaks their way in anyway and proceeds to do things they shouldn't be doing. Had that happen down in Myrtle Beach when they tried to establish a regular public restroom, and it became something where they had to station a full-time police officer just for the public restroom. It became a lot more of an expense and a headache than they ever expected. So I would not recommend it. The other thing is we have very limited space here, and so in order to facilitate something like that, you'd have to give away a significant portion of what you're gaining by doing this exercise to get those restrooms in the first place. So it's kind of a double whammy there in terms of really not being a tremendously good idea.
How old were those restrooms in Myrtle Beach? How dated were they?
They currently are 8 years old, and they remain locked most hours. They open them for about 5 hours a day, and they do station a police officer there the entire time.
Well, you know, Myrtle Beach is a little bit different.
It is.
Than what we have here, but I have seen other restrooms where they were automated, and they were a little bit nicer. I went to National League of Cities in California, and they had really nice restrooms available where we could have them in our downtowns, and they could be manned pretty easily by, electric locks and things of that nature. So,
The other option I have seen is in Europe, and this is one that hasn't taken off here yet because they tend to be fairly non-private, is they have individual stations where they're open all the time, but you essentially walk behind a screen and the bottom half is wide open. So people know when there's someone in there and when there's not.
We can try it here then.
We haven't quite reached that level of security in our privacy yet in America.
And I understand that restrooms present some problems, but I kind of like the idea because I think you really get more traffic if people have a way to go to the bathroom, even if it's a unisex bathroom. Because going downtown anyway, there's no way to go to the bathroom.
Wouldn't that be a facility that could be something outside of this, though?
sure.
And in the area possibly, not just in this alleyway.
Definitely, and you do have the good fortune of the city owning property
Right.
nearby.
Right.
So the opportunity to have something that's open certain hours while you already have people in the vicinity is something y'all could look into. And I would recommend in the long term that be your focus rather than a freestanding element somewhere else. That's where it really starts to become a difficult
Yeah.
thing.
And another aspect of restaurant is, you know, every store and building downtown has restrooms, and if it's looked at as a customer service thing,
Draw
it draws, because I know when I'm in downtowns and I go to the bathroom, I go into a store, I usually walk out with a purchase.
Yeah.
So if it's looked upon as more customer service by the businesses and merchants, then you not only just have one, but there's many available restrooms that might be more convenient to you on the other end of the street and having to run to where it is. So there's different views of it. There's pros and cons to each, but it's just something to think about.
Yeah.
All right, and then the one other item that usually comes up when you talk about taking what is currently an active alleyway that has parking in it is parking. And this looks a little blurred up there, but you see the project site in green, and Morgan, where it passes from Main to Hain, currently has parallel parking opportunity on it. But I wanted to show in this graphic that there are significant number of parking spaces within just a couple blocks of this, including on-street parking both on Main and Hain. You have public parking directly across the street here and here. You've got some private parking for businesses here, but there's additional parking on side streets, including Stewart and Windsor. So really, in the immediate vicinity, there's a significant amount of parking. So the 5 to 6 spaces you might lose on Morgan, you're going to have plenty of other opportunity to absorb that elsewhere. So that's the majority of it. The next part is what do we do from here? I've got the presentation to you today. We are working on 100% construction documents currently, and we'll incorporate anything that comes out of today's discussion and any elements that might yet be undecided, and there are a few of them that we need to finalize. And really, it's not a matter of whether or not we have the elements, it's what exactly do they look like. So there's some fine details that still need to be decided over the next week and a half. But that bid package with all that information is intended to be complete on the 21st, advertised on the 22nd. And that advertisement will include the pre-qualification of bidders, which is a process that we recommended at the very beginning that you all go through, and we continue to do so. Anytime you are dealing with a project that has historic buildings adjacent to it and a highly urbanized component like this, where once you open up the pavement, who knows what you're going to find. Invariably, you've got 150-year-old utilities associated with this site. And some of those are going to be underground when we start to dig things up. So,
And just a reminder, we did pre-qualify the bidders for the Center Theater project, and we all know how that really turned out. We want someone that's experienced in dealing in downtowns and tight spaces and old buildings, and this process allows the contractor to prove, to give us the documentation that they are qualified to do this special type of construction work.
exactly.
And I guess they'd have to have some kind of insurance or bond or something?
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Okay. In all projects.
Yeah.
And so the intention right now was to have that bid period run through till right before Thanksgiving. We might extend that depending on any issues that we might have with that pre-qualification process. Worst case, we're talking about like a 2-week extension of what you see on screen. But currently that bid opening would be slated for right before Thanksgiving. Y'all would negotiate contract with the successful bidder over the next month, and then construction could begin right before Christmas time. So December construction with about a 5-month lead time. Don't want to scare you too much. 5 months would put you at a May completion date. So substantial completion is when we walk through and double check their work. That would happen in late April, and then that first week of May, we would hope that they would have everything cleaned up and be ready to open up to the public.
And that's pending any, like everything these days, delays in supplies or materials. Or
Yes.
Things tend to have a long backlog or timeline sometimes. I know furniture for the parklet was delayed because of those demand and supply.
Yes, I can speak from my own recent personal experience that all projects that we've bid over the last month and a half, everyone has asked for extended timeframes, and they've all asked to begin their purchasing of materials on the very first day. They want to start into their lead times they need to get steel and to get the pricing locked in for different materials on day one, rather than wait till their usual target schedules. So definitely, I'm sure you will hear those requests as we go through the bid process. So are there any other questions?
If we have any other questions, will we just get in contact with Matthew Black and get them to him and get them to you? How will we do that?
Definitely, you can contact Matthew, and he'll forward everything to me.
Thank you.
Certainly.
Good presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Lambert.
Yeah, that's an exciting project.
Appreciate it. Sounds like I'm going to handle it.
Next item, excuse me, next item would be an update on the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee that's chaired by Salute Anthony. Salute, if you would bring us up to date.
Okay.
on that, please.
The Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee met, and it was suggested, made the motion and second, that we request moving the meeting schedule to monthly rather than quarterly. The thought was too much time elapsed, and for continuity and for a better working schedule, we are making the motion to change the meeting schedule to monthly.
Okay.
That is a motion.
So moved.
Councilman James, second.
Okay, we've got a motion and a second. All in favor signify by raising your hand, please. Okay, motion carries. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next, we'll have a discussion on the downtown Monroe Social District. And we'll recognize Downtown Director Matt Black, if he would.
You just walked out.
Where is Matt? Not very sociable.
Second. Oh, you so I'm like, I can't see this stuff. Then you got to see all this.
Okay. I read it.
There was another item between mine.
They were quick.
Didn't take long.
Hello, everybody. Matt Black again. So this is an exciting House bill that the legislators have passed in North Carolina that I'm going to give a brief overview about today. And it's specifically in regard to social districts. For full details, it's also in your packet. What they passed is a small portion of the entirety of changes to alcohol sales within North Carolina. There are also other states that already do something similar to North Carolina. So there's probably about 20 to 30. Louisiana is a prime example of that. So the overall background of it, it's legislation or House Bill 980, and it was passed this September. And we're planning to move as fast as possible once we get staff input, as well as through the Downtown Advisory Board and the Public Safety Committee. And this essentially allows for local governments to establish common areas where patrons of existing ABC alcohol permittees, where they can freely assemble to consume purchased beverages. So a great benefit of that would be, for example, the Art Walk would be a good example, or if retailers and businesses want to do a sip and shop, which has been done in the past. So there are two requirements in general from the city and from the ABC permittees as well. The North Carolina's really set it on the cities to implement this as well as enforce this new bill. And essentially, the city must adopt an ordinance in pursuant of the General Statute 160, where the districts must be clearly defined and the area must be displayed on site with signs and conspicuous locations. So this is an example right here. If you guys can see that, where the blue is the outline of the social district area. So this is something of what they're looking for. And once I work with the attorney and other staff, we will present that to the ABC Commission. They'll have to see that before it is finalized. And of course, with your final approval as well. So other requirements, we have to post signage. There's two ways I've seen this done. One has been through the sidewalk space, which I'm a big fan of. It displays all the information that's required, and you can do it by the old-fashioned way of signage. But it must include days and hours that alcohol can be consumed. It must have the ALE division officer number they can contact and the jurisdiction, as well as a clear statement that the purchase and consumption of the alcohol beverages must be maintained in that district and the proposed hours. Other city requirements is the city must establish management and maintenance plans on their city website. They also must post the renderings of the district boundaries, which is what we saw in the couple slides back, and the days and hours during which the beverages may be consumed. So, from a permittee side, they can only sell on their licensed premise, and they must use containers that show drinks which was purchased within their permittee area, and they have to use a common logo for the district. So the social district itself will have a specific logo. As you can see in the images, that's an example of what the cup should look like. You'll have your business logo or the permittee's logo on one side, as well as the overall social district on the other. And it must also show, for example, drink responsibly, and it must not be glass and cannot be more than 16 fluid ounces. Other general requirements, the alcoholic beverages must be purchased from the district permittee, and they must meet the container requirements. They must be consumed during those specific days and hours listed on the signage, and they can no longer carry, well, they cannot carry more than 2 beers or wine in that area at a time. And they must be dispersed prior to exiting the district. So a prime example of that is if they go to East Frank and buy a drink, and they want to go to the courthouse at 4, they have to finish that drink before they enter into another ABC permittee area. But let's say they go to the courthouse, buy a drink, they can go into a retail business such as Silver Lining or Embellish and drink. Now, let's say that Embellish does not want to participate in social district, they can just turn that customer away and let them know that they do not want to participate.
Let me ask you a question.
Yes.
You said that a patron can get 2 beers or a wine at one time.
Yes.
What is the cutoff?
Well, that's really usually you can only have 2 drinks at once.
At once?
Yes. And then other than that, you're violating any, I think even overall ABC license, you cannot, they cannot serve you more than 2 drinks.
Oh.
Like when you go to a Panthers game, you can't get more than 2 drinks. So I believe it's a North Carolina legislative.
Okay.
That's at any one time, of course.
Yes.
but-
Okay.
At one time, yes.
So in other words, you have one for yourself, you could bring one to a spouse, but if you have 4 people at your table, you can't walk away with 4.
Right.
You've got to have
You
another
cannot.
person come to bring the 2.
Okay.
Or you gotta drop off 2 drinks, go get.
Or, yeah, drop off 2 and go get 2 more.
Yes, correct. So while it's very simple, it is relying on the city and local level to enforce and implement this social district.
One other question.
Yes.
On the containers, one side is a city logo, another side the business. Okay, will the city sell these containers to the?
No, but so I have designed a logo based off our current downtown Monroe logo. And it'll be like, for example, Monroe Social District. I'm going to talk with the Downtown Advisory Board about if they approve of that, if they're okay with moving forward with that. Jason Wally designed the logo. He's also on our downtown advisory board. So he can help out in possibly designing a new one if they wish to move forward with a different one.
But how will the, say, Main Street Bistro, so they want to use them, so how is it that both emblems or logos get on the cup? Where does this cup come from?
So if they just want to operate in the social district, the business would have to buy their own cups. However, if they have an event that is sponsored by the downtown, they can use that funds to purchase cups. Like for example, we have a downtown sponsorship grant. They can use that $500 towards the cups, or any, like the art walk is sponsored by the city, stuff like that. If they're willing to participate as active role, then we'll help with the funding. Because I consider that type of stuff also marketing material. Anything with logos and advertising is considered.
Now, the logo goes to Downtown Advisory Committee, and then it comes to us?
I can present that. If you want that information, I can give it to you as well. And
Well, what
present
I would think it would come past us,
Yes. So have you seen the colored logo that we currently have for downtown?
I've seen
it.
it.
Says shop, dine, and eat. It's sort of like that logo, except you cut off the top part and you just put Monroe Social District, or MSD for short. It's
But
sweet
I
and
feel like-
simple, and it can be visually printed onto the cups without costing the person who's purchasing the cups too much money.
Okay. I still would like for council to have the opportunity to see the logo.
Absolutely.
I had a question also about the, you had mentioned that you can't go to another business that sells alcohol. So basically you said if you get a drink from East Frank, you can't go to another establishment like the self-pour.
Yes.
Or self-pour. Now, is that law, or is that just?
Yes, it's written. Yes, it's in the law.
Okay.
In that social district.
That follows the ABC. The same is true for Music on Main or any event held downtown. You can't come into the music area with a beer from, say, the pub on the corner. And someone from the music area can't go into the pub on the corner with a beer from the music event. That is ABC law, and if that is done, both establishments can lose their license.
So that's not, so I thought the social district did kind of encompass where the businesses that were in the social district, they couldn't bar hop.
No, it allows you to go from one to the other, but you can't bring a drink from one into another.
Right. But what you can do is, for example, you can have the businesses participate in that event, and let's say they block off Stewart Street or another street, they can all join at that one area if that area doesn't have an ABC permit, if that makes sense.
So basically, we can't go inside the establishment, but you can go outside the establishment. You can go on the sidewalks.
With anywhere within that.
Gotcha, but you can't go in.
Yeah, so there, like I said, so if you have, like, they had that event coming up in Halloween time, they can block off parts of downtown for part of their permit, and then those people can get the alcohol from those establishments and bring it to that specific area, where maybe where they had the food trucks located, for example.
Or like a beer garden or something.
Yes, correct.
Question for you. So with the art walk, I'm saying you got people that have drinks and offer drinks. They walking around, so that's not regulated?
That's potential, that's illegal.
Yes,
However,
technically
they're
it is.
not being.
Open.
Yes.
So if they are doing that now, they run the risk of being arrested.
Yes, and that comes with enforcement.
And that's what this social district will allow.
Yes.
People to buy a drink and walk down the sidewalk, enter a retail or whatever establishment that allows them to. But they cannot enter into another establishment that sells.
Gotcha.
Right.
But they can walk around the downtown and enjoy.
It would also benefit the
Christmas
parklet.
lights, whatever, enjoy the wonderful space in Windsor Alley once it's done and that kind of thing.
Man, I couldn't see, but are you looking at one big district, say from Southern Roots to Southern Range?
So we're still talking with staff and other committees like the public safety to see what needs to be in the district. Like, for example, we know, like, for example, the courthouse needs to be taken out of it because you don't want people walking in there with alcohol and stuff like that. So there will be some places that will not be able to be part of the social district.
After downtown advisory, I'd like for it to come before public safety also.
Okay. Yes, but like I said, the ultimate decision for that social district is city council. So, and that's all. That's really all that is incorporated in the social district. That's all I have for today.
I got a question for you. Are
Yes.
you do a public survey asking the public their input on this?
We can do that. I've had a couple of business meetings where we've discussed it, and they're all for it. We can do the general public with, like, for example, like a Google Forms.
Like on this?
But to be honest with you, most people would love to be able to walk around with alcohol if they already drink. It's just more places to go.
I think it's a good idea to engage as many citizens as possible, because they'll be the extra ones, you know, extra.
Calling us complaining like, hey, why y'all approved this?
Well, and also, I mean, you're also going to have people who complain who don't even drink. I mean,
Right,
you
that's
know,
true.
at the end of the
Right.
day, we also want to be, you know, downtown friendly, where we offer things that other
Right.
downtowns are offering, because people don't even come to downtown, and if they're not even involved in the episodes, then why should they really
Right.
have much input? So we want people to have input, that actually participate in events in downtown, that actually go to the bars, who want to actually enjoy the life. So the people that
Well-
don't enjoy the life,
They ain't gonna be for it.
Right.
they're not getting exactly.
Yeah, as long as you have the survey in those establishments, but I do think we need citizen input in whatever we do.
I will say this, that the two entities that are taking the biggest risk for this social district is the downtown businesses who are serving the alcohol, because they're still liable, and also the city, because it is public right of way. So that's two things to consider, two biggest parts of that.
Any other questions for Matt?
Thank you, Mr. Black, for that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next on the agenda, item 6, is the formation of the Monroe Union County Economic Development Commission. And we'll recognize now our Economic Development Executive Director, Chris Patay.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Holloway, council members, Intermanager Bourne. It's my pleasure to bring before you tonight the interlocal organization and operating agreement to create the Monroe Union County Economic Development Commission. A lot of words there. Beginning in January of 2013, the City of Monroe and Union County created the first unified voice for economic development in the county in over 20 years. They entered into that local agreement to provide economic development services for the entire county. The agreement basically was 8.5 years ago, and through that joint effort, we've been able to save the taxpayers for the City of Monroe and Union County about $3 million in duplicative administrative cost that was there by having two agencies. The latest interlocal was extended in June of 2020 and has given time for the development of the third generation of this agreement. So it has gone through its initial agreement, then it was created into a second agreement that allowed for a little bit more parity between the two funding entities. And so now we're looking at that third. On May 20th of this year, we had that joint meeting with the county commissioners, and at that time we presented this concept to you, and it was unanimously approved to go forward by both elected boards to go forward. So the city and county staff came together and decided that the next natural thing was to look at something with a little bit more equal governance, to seek to create a standalone organization with equal members on the executive board and retain the primary structure of our Economic Development Board of Advisors. The group also recommended that the name be called the Monroe Union County Economic Development Commission. So the commission formation allows for the equal governance of the two primary funding entities while retaining the government organization to keep the current employees whole within the state retirement system, the current earned city benefits, and other compensations. The retention of the state retirement also maintains strong competitiveness as we recruit for future employees or a replacement of members or the executive director. The executive board would have 6 positions on there, 3 for each funding body. So the City of Monroe would have the city manager and 2 representatives appointed by the city council, and the county would also have the county manager and 2 appointees from the county commissioners, or by the county commissioners. It could be whichever they would like. The group will then act as the governing body, approving budgets, policies, management of the executive director. The Economic Development Board of Advisors would retain its current role as advice and consent on incentives, marketing initiatives, development of work plans, and other strategic items related to the activities of recruitment and retention of industries. So the executive director would also have sole authority over staff, including but not limited to the hiring, salaries, promotions, and other removal of persons employed by the commission. Now, the commission may also contract with for current services that may be covered by the City of Monroe or Union County, and this could include but not limited to healthcare, finance, etc. Some and all of these services could be supplied by the City of Monroe or the county based on the value and cost. The new formation also allows for the more flexibility to serve the other municipalities in Union County through supplemental agreements for specific economic development services that they desire beyond the base economic development activity provided by the county's funding. These could include specialized marketing initiatives and industrial park development and/or dedicated staffing. So the Monroe Union County Economic Development Commission will have a base funding equally from the City of Monroe and Union County, with annual adjustments to cover inflation and other cost increases. This base amount will be needed to increase just due to the fact that there's going to be some additional administrative cost by being a standalone entity. The city and the county will retain oversight of the commission through its equal representation on the executive board. In this way, Monroe and Union County will have equal oversight in exchange for equal funding. All the assets of the current Economic Development Office will become property of the new Monroe Union County Economic Development Commission. The executive director or staff designee will also retain the responsibility of attending city and county staff meetings and perform regular reporting to the Monroe City Council and the Union County Board of Commissioners. Again, we had the city and the county both heard this and unanimously agreed to move forward with this concept on the May 20th joint meeting. And tonight we're asking for you to accept this formal agreement and resolution to move forward. The Union County Board of Commissioners approved this agreement at their regular meeting on September 20th, 2021. It is recommended that from the Board of Advisors and staff that City Council approve this interlocal organization and operation agreement with Union County to form this commission. We also are asking for the adoption of the joint resolution agreeing to the formation of the commission, as well as authorizing interim city manager to execute the agreement.
Question, this interlocal organization, the operating agreement, it's just going forth, do we have to do this each year?
No.
One time, okay.
And so there is a, I apologize, I can't remember, I think it's 5 years, and then it's automatic renewals unless you want to change it. So there is an opportunity to get out of that. You can get out of it earlier, but it takes a 2-year written notice.
Okay.
Mayor, I make a motion to approve interlocal organization and operating agreement.
A second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor, signify by raising your hand.
Aye.
Okay, motion passes.
Thank you very
Mayor,
much.
I also make a motion to adopt a joint resolution forming Monroe Union County Economic Development Commission.
I'll second that.
Okay, have a motion and a second. Those in favor, please signify by raising your hand.
Motion to authorize the interim city manager to execute any and all necessary documents.
I second that.
Okay, have a motion and a second. Those in favor, please raise your hand. Motion passes. Thank you very much, Chris.
Thank you all. Appreciate it.
At this time, I'll recess the City Council Strategic Planning Meeting of October 12th, 2021. We'll reconvene at 6 o'clock.
Reconvene for, you have dinner
Yeah.
and then we'll adjourn that meeting and then reconvene before that.